The Lord of Darkness by Shelby Cody Sweeney. Part 1, The End of the World. Chapter 5, Gluttony. Nick strode into a green and purple fast food restaurant, and his senses were immediately assailed by too loud conversation, too bright lights, and too greasy smells. The cashier recited a rote greeting in a disinterested monotone. Welcome to Even More, home of the Even More burger. Today we're offering 2 hyper-sized fries for the price of 1. Can I take your order? 1 barrel of Beelzebub lard, please, Nick said brightly. The cashier blinked at him. What? Beelzebub lard was used to cook most of their menu items, but was not itself a menu item. It was also supposedly a well-kept company secret. The doors of the Even More flew open to reveal a man whose cartoon likeness was plastered all over the restaurant. OMG, it's the owner, Evan Moore! Squeaked the cashier, momentarily forgetting to feign apathy. What are the odds? Nick smirked, whirling around. Evan Moore, or rather, Beelzebub, archdemon of gluttony, had large gold rings on every finger except his left ring finger. He had a black goatee and curly mustache pasted to his face with sweat. Beelzebub carried an ornate silver cane with a gigantic emerald on top. He walked into the room as if someone should have been throwing down rose petals for him to step on. Everything about him was amplified, from his girth to his honey-lathered voice. Nick, you old devil, Beelzebub proclaimed. You haven't darkened my door in decades. To what do I owe the pleasure of your patronage at my fine dining establishment? Papa, exclaimed Nick, embracing him warmly. I'm here on business, unfortunately. Beelzebub nodded sagely. Ah, well, I always mix business with pleasure, so we ought to head back to my place. They could have teleported, but instead the archdemon led Nick to an oversized limousine. You know how limos look like someone stuck most of a car between 2 halves of another car? The archdemon of gluttony's limo looked like someone stuck most of a limo between 2 halves of another limo. There was a steward inside the vehicle who offered them champagne. Nick barely tried to stifle a laugh. No, thanks. Nick, Lord of Darkness, pleased to meet you. The pleasure is mine, my lord, the steward replied, delicately dodging the implicit request for his name. He had his sights on a better career opportunity and had no interest in acquainting himself with any of Mr. Moore's unusual associates. From the outside, Beelzebub's palace appeared to be approximately the size and splendor of the Palace of Versailles in its heyday. Once inside, it became clear that the palace was actually much gaudier and more massive than that. Notre Dame could easily fit inside the entrance hall alone. Beelzebub led Nick down a long hallway to one of the many tea rooms. The banquet table-length coffee table was nearly buckling under the feast laid out upon it. Alongside the tea set, there was a great pyramid of cucumber sandwiches, a mountain range of scones, a tower of tea cakes, and a battlement of macaroons. Archdemon Beelzebub of Gluttony had his staff prepare such a feast daily in case of visitors. The devil and archdemon of gluttony sat and drank tea while apocalyptic rain and wind pounded against the bay windows. You're clearly thriving, Nick noted. I love this job, Beelzebub confessed, and it's difficult to argue with the mountains of success I experience. If it were up to me, I'd do nothing but this for the next 1,000,000 years at least. Glad to hear it, Nick began. Beelzebub interrupted him. Oh, Nicky, don't patronize me. Naturally, I know why you're here. I'm telling you, I'm on your side. Relax. Drink more tea. Have a scone. You were planning on spending some time here anyway, were you not? Yeah, sure. Love a scone, said the devil, taking one and leaning back in his chair. Sorry, I had a whole speech planned. Would you like to say it anyway? The archdemon of gluttony offered. Nick laughed. Nah, I'm good. Too much of that today already. This is surprisingly refreshing. Beelzebub beamed. Marvelous. Now, regale me with what you've been up to. You were ducking the limelight for the past couple millennia. And then today happened. You keep insisting you aren't the bad guy, but it's a role you seem determined to play. In any other story, saving Earth makes me the good guy, Nick pointed out. Those are human stories, Nick, Beelzebub reminded him. Speaking of stories, is it true that you... He stopped talking abruptly. What is it? Asked Nick, trying to follow Beelzebub's gaze past the walls. Archdemon Beelzebub of Gluttony frowned. I'm uncertain. Something feels wrong. Beelzebub was feeling the presence of the horseman of famine, who had just arrived on his doorstep with the other 3 horsemen of the apocalypse. The horseman of famine was named Christopher. He had pale skin, light brown eyes, and blonde hair. He wore what he died in, a blood-splattered crusader's uniform, complete with chainmail. His otherwise majestic black horse was so thin its bones were clearly visible, but it actually felt no pain or discomfort because it was more of a construct than a real horse. Christopher was married to the horseman of pestilence. When Raphael selected the couple for the job, he called them a package deal, which made Nick and Michael flush. It's the same phrase Nick used to describe Michael and himself when they interviewed to join our team billions of years ago, a package deal. And now they could barely stand to look at each other. The horseman of pestilence, Kiara, came from the United States in the mid-20th century. Her mocha skin was as smooth as glass, while her ebony hair spiraled out wildly, barely restrained by a pink headband. She wore a light blue shirt, comfortable jeans, practical riding boots, and a small gold cross on a thin chain. Her great white horse appeared ravaged by pestilence, feverish and covered in gaping sores. Merrick, the horseman of war, had dark hair and eyes and olive skin. He wore a weather-beaten, faded red tunic, black pants, and leather armor. His muscular horse's red coat appeared matted with blood. Merrick was sullen, ornery, and devoted to his own code of honor. After he submitted his application for the job, he tracked down everyone else who applied and challenged them to a duel, eventually wearing them all down through a combination of swordsmanship and relentless persistence. Then he sulked until the apocalypse arrived. Horseman Danny of Death rode a semi-transparent horse. She had straight black hair, dark brown eyes, and tan skin. She dressed in all black with artificially torn pants, a tight camisole, and a funereal veil. Her jewelry was predominantly leather and metal studs. Danny and Nick were friends. They met during her penance when she was at her most broken, and he helped piece her back together. Nick claims he didn't pull any strings to get her selected as the Horseman of Death, but I'm not sure I believe him. If we assume Nick's honesty, my pet theory is that God secretly selected Danny for the job so she'd leave the horseman to Nick, but there's no proof. Beelzebub's butler was seemingly unperturbed by the presence of 4 massive horses and their eclectically dressed riders. Yes. Is Nick here? Asked Danny, Horseman of Death. The butler, Jenkins, somehow managed to convey his utter disdain for them without appearing to move a single muscle. I've long suspected that his name isn't actually Jenkins, but I never cared enough to look into it. And whom shall I say is calling? Jenkins asked. He looked into the distance momentarily, listening intently to his earpiece. Then he looked back at them and said, Right this way. The horseman stepped into the palace as if walking into a museum without knowing which parts were exhibits. Jenkins raised his eyebrows pointedly. Perhaps some members of your party might be more comfortable in his lordship's stables. They will be given the utmost care. Previously unseen servants seemed to emerge from the engraved golden walls to hold the reins of the mighty horses. I guess so, said Horseman Kiara of Pestilence, dismounting her horse slowly. The others hesitantly followed suit. Would sirs and madams prefer alternate forms of transportation as we proceed to the tea room? Asked Jenkins, gesturing towards a line of electric scooters along the wall. They then noticed that Jenkins himself was perched upon an electric scooter of his own. Horseman Danny of Death bit back a grin. I think we can walk. As you wish, replied the butler, motoring down the expansive hallway as they followed. After they'd gone about 100 yards, Jenkins paused to ask with complete sincerity, Would sirs and madams care for new pairs of shoes? What? Laughed Merrick, Horseman of War. Yours may be worn out after the long walk down this hallway, and there's still a journey ahead of us, Jenkins explained politely. The Horseman of Famine felt like he was going to be sick. The others politely refused the offer with as little laughter as they could manage. 100 yards later, Jenkins repeated his offer, and they their refusal. They took a few more steps, then stopped in front of yet another set of lavishly adorned doors. Jenkins, asked a booming, honey-lathered voice from the other side, quit lurking about and bring in the source of the trouble. Jenkins dutifully opened the doors and ushered the horseman inside. Nick isn't sure who he expected to see, but it wasn't who he saw. He gaped at them and dropped the teacup he was holding. Two of the ubiquitous servants rushed forward to sweep up the mess and pour him a fresh cup of tea. The devil recovered from his shock, crossed his arms, and said, "This better be one hell of an explanation." "We've come here," began Kiara, Horseman of Pestilence. "No, not you," Nick interrupted. "Danny?" "Unofficial business," Danny, Horseman of Death, assured him quickly. "After Archangel Gabriel told us not to go to Earth, someone prayed to Christopher and convinced him to come here anyway. We came to get him, and now we're afraid we're going to get fired for coming here early. Can you get us out of this?" Nick ran his hand through his hair as he considered the situation. Then he said, "Well, first things first," stood up and put his hands together in prayer. A beam of light burst forth from heaven to shine upon his countenance. "I don't believe it," Nick marveled. "They put me on hold." The Archdemon of Gluttony got much too close to the Horseman of Famine and studied him intensely. "Have we met?" he oozed gently, as if not really expecting an answer. "I'd have remembered," Horseman Christopher of Famine assured him tightly. Meanwhile, our little corner of heaven was in utter chaos. Once we realized the apocalypse had started, we figured the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse had to be on Earth, but we couldn't seem to find them. War, famine, pestilence, and death were blossoming up everywhere, as if the horsemen were teleporting around at random. I was in no mood to chat when Nick prayed to me again. I put him on hold, so to speak, and he ended that prayer and started new ones until I answered. "We're working on it," I snapped. "It's fixed," Nick said. So many reactions exploded inside me at once that they canceled each other out, leaving me to blankly ask, "What?" "I got the 4 horsemen and paused the apocalypse," Nick elaborated. "Hang on," I said. I conferenced in the other archangels and explained, "Nick found them and managed to pause the apocalypse." There was a chorus of relieved exclamations. "So they've returned to heaven," reasoned Archangel Raphael of Healing and Patience. "No, they're on Earth with me," Nick told us. "Then you didn't stop the apocalypse," argued Jophi, Archangel of Humility. She had auburn hair, bright blue eyes, and warm ivory skin. Jophi was especially beautiful, and she managed to remain humble about it, making her even more beautiful. But her beauty didn't extend to work ethic. She was playing a video game under the table, either not knowing or not caring that we could all see her doing it. Archangel Jophi of Humility rarely gave work her full attention, which probably explains a lot. "Check your readouts," Nick suggested. Raphael pulled up real-time telemetry graphs of Earth. We stared at them, a little stunned. Everything was fine. It had all returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after so much of humanity was wiped out. I argued, "But wouldn't it still be safer to send them up here now? Nick, you of all people shouldn't want to risk it." "Okay, but is it a problem if I do?" Nick countered. "Well," mused Archangel Raphael of Patience and Healing, "I suppose if you keep all the effects contained, it wouldn't do any harm." "Thanks, guys. See you soon," Nick said brightly before quickly ending the prayer. I immediately started a new prayer to Nick without the others. "Nick, what are you doing?" "I got a feeling my communications are being monitored today," he replied. "You're just going to have to trust me." "Nick, please," I urged. "I want to save the humans as much as you do. More even. Just tell me what you're trying to do and we can work out a plan together." But my arguments were futile because Nick had already ended the prayer.